Leary. Kevin, let me start with you. I mean, these economic numbers for the president, the toughest they have ever been for him. I mean, this has been, even when he lost the election to Joe Biden, he still was basically above water with Americans on the economy. Maybe not on other things, but on the economy. People are not feeling great about where they are. And I'm curious if you think he's running into the exact same problem that bedeviled President Biden and the Biden administration, which is that they kept throwing numbers at people, insisting, yes, no, it's fine, it's all great. People just didn't feel that way, and they weren't buying it. It seems the same thing may be happening to Trump. What say you?
In today's video, CNN host Kasie Hunt humiliates Kevin O'Leary on CNN's The Arena. Kevin O'Leary comes in with the classic top-line argument. Markets are up, inflation isn't at its peak anymore, and the numbers look fine on paper. But Kasie isn't letting him skate past the reality that most people aren't living inside the stock market. They're living inside rent bills, grocery bills, and credit card interest rates that just keep climbing. And that's where the debate gets real, because you can tell there's a major disconnect between political messaging and everyday life. So let's dive in and watch how Kasie Hunt shuts down Kevin O'Leary on CNN's The Arena.
So, as you know, Kasie, I don't shill for politicians, but I shill for policy. There are some truths in his roadshow, and let's face it, this is the earliest anybody's gone on the road for the midterms, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's on the road pitching for the midterms. Yes, inflation's come down from 9 to 3.1. The target of the Fed is 2. You saw massive dissension on that rate cut yesterday, so there won't be any more anytime soon. So here we are. Inflation is still showing up in consumer goods and services on protein and grocery. Part of it is he hasn't fine-tuned the tariffs yet on things like potash and bauxite. People don't care about that, but that's what farmers are complaining about. They can't get potash because there's none in America. They got to buy it from Saskatchewan, and it's tariffed right now. So a little fine-tuning on that. There's good news and there's bad news. But hey, every politician goes out there and shills on. Remember, he's only been there 11 months, and I have to hold some high marks for some policy.
Make a dent?
It's too soon because I don't know if we're going to get anything good on housing, which is a pain point. Softwood lumber is still tariffed at 25%. I mean, this fine-tuning stuff I'm talking about, nobody cares about. But it shows up at input costs, shows up at inflation. Ouch. And it's hard, and as everybody's saying, you can't say everything's perfect. It's not yet perfect. And so more work to be done, but midterms, let's say, are 11 months away. And that's what's going to matter. Rubber hits the road then. By the way, we'll see who's left in the cabinet after Jan 31st. If any whacking is going to occur within the policy cabinet, it'll be happening in January. The team that's going to go to the midterms will be defined on January 31st. And as a policy guy, an investor, that's all I care about. I think, you know, you got to. Here's a problem. We're only 2% off the all-time highs in the S&P, so the world likes the American economy. Sorry to tell you that, but it's true.
I certainly take your point. I'm not sure I think that, 25% tariff on the wood you need to build houses if housing costs are your biggest policy problem necessarily is something that's around the edges. Let me bring the rest of the panel in. I mean, Paul Begala, I'm reminded of your old colleague's axiom that remains true today, that it is the economy stupid. And honestly, people don't feel great. I mean, I think everyone at this table, it probably shows up in your, I'm trying to buy Christmas presents for my kids. The budget that I had set last year for those Christmas gifts, let me tell you, does not go nearly as far this year.
Well, you should know your kid only needs one doll.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Just saying. Just saying.
She does not have 37. I will say that.
And hamburger, $6.23 a pound, highest in the history of hamburger. Try raising 4 boys.
Yeah.
Eat a lot of hamburger, okay? This is the problem. It's Christmas. I've been watching It's a Wonderful Life, just like Zuzu says, every time you hear a bell ring, an angel gets their wings.
Gets his wings. Yeah.
Every time Donald Trump talks about the cost of living, 5 Republicans lose their seats. He is so dumb about this.
Not quite as poetic.
He is repeating exactly Biden's mistake. By the way, Biden's all-time low in the economy was 33. Trump is already below that. And by the way, cost of living croaked Biden's presidency and croaked his vice president's candidacy to succeed him. So 31, this is awful. It's awful. And I just want to say, as a Democrat, Keep doing it, Mr. Trump. I'm praying for your health. We don't want you to get laryngitis. Go out there every day and keep electing Democrats with your idiotic economic messaging. That's all I want.
You can almost feel Kasie Hunt's frustration in this debate because she's asking the most basic common sense question in politics. If the economy is supposedly fine, why does it feel like people are drowning? And that's the part Kevin O'Leary always kind of glides past. Not because he's lying, but because he's talking like an investor. The S&P being close to record highs doesn't mean the average family is thriving. Most Americans don't own enough stocks for that to change their lives. What they do own is a rent payment, a grocery bill, a car note, and a credit card balance with interest rates that are still brutal. That's why Kasie and Paul have the stronger argument here. Inflation cooling from a peak is not the same thing as prices going back down. Prices went up fast and now they're staying up. Even when inflation slows, people are still paying the new higher baseline, and wages haven't caught up evenly, especially for workers who aren't getting steady raises. That's why the numbers look better can still feel like a joke to someone staring at $7 eggs, $6 gas in some places, or rent renewals that jump hundreds of dollars. And housing is the killer issue nobody can spin. We've had a historic shortage of homes for years, and higher interest rates turned what used to be a manageable mortgage into something totally out of reach. So when Kevin says it's too soon, that's exactly the point. Voters don't care how long a president has been in office, they care whether life is more affordable right now. And the tariff stuff he brings up, that actually backs up Kasie and Paul even more, because tariffs don't punish foreign countries in some magical way. They raise input costs, and those costs roll downhill straight into consumer prices.
I'm so happy to see Kevin here, because I think the last time I was on with him, he was touting how great all these tariffs were going to work out. And instead, what I'm hearing now is that it needs to have some fine-tuning. The fact of the matter is that this is all self-inflicted. He inherited not a terrible economy. He inherited an economy that was actually improving. And what we see now is an economy that's stalled. It's stalled in jobs, it's stalled in housing, and prices are still very difficult for people. And what the real message is, and I'm sure that any economist will tell you this, is that prices don't come down unless you have a recession. So prices are not going to come down. So the idea that prices are going to come down is the wrong message to send. That is a fiction.
Yeah, inflation is coming down, as Kevin pointed out. I know Kevin's feeling the pain point on that Swiss tariff on watches. I'm sure he's suffering greatly. But, you know, if you have, this is like the tale of two economies, or maybe three economies.
Oh, look at that. Wow. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, there he goes. Like,
Oh my God, raise taxes
there you go.
on the rich. Please, somebody raise taxes on this guy.
Paul, but this is the point I'm going to make, right? So if you have money, if you're a participant in the equities market today, you're doing very well. Just as Kevin said, the market's going gangbusters. So if you have a 401k, if you're participating in the equities market, you're doing pretty well. You're feeling good. A lot of people in America don't have money to invest. They're putting money in their tank. They're going to the grocery store. They're taking their dollars, trying to figure out what goes where. And so those are the people, that bottom third of the socioeconomic spectrum, that was the Trump base, the black, brown, white, working class Americans that elected Donald Trump are the ones that are feeling most pain right now. And I think the president needs to figure out how to focus on that and get the message. Now, listen, come to January 1st, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, all those things kick in. There'll be more money in people's pockets. They'll start feeling that a little bit more. They'll have a little more money to walk around with.
Not if they want health insurance.
But it's not, well, they're going to get it fixed. But that's not quick. People want quick. They want quick. They want the president to talk about it.
And to your point, messaging, Donald Trump said it would be quick. It's true, Kevin. It's 11 months. But the reality is Donald Trump said, vote for me. I will fix it. I believe he likes to use the expression on day one. The reality is he went to Pennsylvania and his White House advisors were like, help me, because Donald Trump never likes to admit that he's wrong. And that's not the message.
I just want to say, once prices jump, they usually stay there unless something dramatic happens, like a recession, a crash in demand, or a major supply shock reversing. That's not pessimism, that's just how inflation works. Grocery stores don't wake up one day and go, you know what, let's roll prices back to 2021. They only drop when consumers stop buying, and that usually means people are hurting even worse. And that's why the quick fix messaging is such a trap. A president can influence inflation at the margins, energy policy, tariffs, interest rate pressure, supply chains, but there's no magic lever that instantly makes rent cheaper or food cheaper. So when you tell voters day one everything's coming down, you basically guarantee backlash when their bills are still high on day 300. Also, Lulu's point about this being self-inflicted is real when you look at tariffs specifically. Tariffs are basically a sales tax on imports, and even when they're aimed at another country, the cost almost always gets passed to American businesses and consumers. You tariff lumber, fertilizer, steel, or machinery parts, you're raising the cost of building homes, growing food, and manufacturing goods. That doesn't just hit Wall Street charts, it hits the price tag at Home Depot and the grocery aisle. And the three economies thing isn't a metaphor, it's literally what the data shows. Wealthier households have assets, stocks, real estate, investments. When markets rise, they gain. But working class households are mostly living on wages, and wages don't feel up when your rent is up, your insurance is up, and your credit card APR is brutal. A booming market can exist at the exact same time millions of people feel broke, because those benefits aren't evenly distributed. And here's the part that really supports Lulu. When Trump's base is heavily made up of non-college working class voters, they're the ones most exposed to price spikes. They spend a bigger share of their income on essentials. They can't wait for Q1. They can't hedge inflation with a portfolio. So if the White House keeps acting like inflation is easing means problem solved, it's the same mistake Biden made, and voters punish that every time.
I want to play something that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who of course is, after having been loyal to the president for many years, now extraordinarily at odds with him. The president keeps calling her a traitor. She's leaving Congress. But she said something in an interview with CBS this week that kind of made a point that certainly we've talked about at this table, because President Trump, when he was first elected in 2016, was in some ways, you know, the everyman's rich guy, right? The person that perhaps if you did well, you applied yourself, you could become wealthy like he did. Here's how Greene talked about Trump, though, in this moment here in 2025. Watch.
I think the president needs to be aware that he's a billionaire, president of the United States, and you can't gaslight people and tell them that their bills are affordable. And you can't tell them that the economy is an A+++. You just can't do that. And I think it's insulting to people's intelligence.
And the Democrats are picking up that messaging. They're saying, thank you very much, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You are hearing more and more. The Democrats who have not been very good on messaging, here are three things you're going to hear them say. Donald Trump doesn't get it. He's living in a billionaire bubble, and he is, quote, out of touch. They're messages that resonate and go through.
Kevin O'Leary, do you think President Trump, I mean, this is someone who, again, took a lot of people by. I was actually on the campaign trail in 2016, and I will say I was taken a little bit less surprised by some of my colleagues who were here in Washington and New York, because you could see it every day, right? But a lot of people were taken by surprise by the numbers of people that voted for Donald Trump, sent him to the White House in 2016 because they were angry, disaffected, disillusioned. They were frustrated, and he tapped into and made them feel like he understood their pain, right? That was then. Now, is Donald Trump out of touch?
No, I don't think so. You got to remember, in every midterm, the incumbent always gets pressure and loses seats. I mean, that's part of the package. The Greene story, she's getting her moment, but she'll, as I say, I have no respect for her, but she's roadkill in the Republican Party, and she has no implementation on policy, so I don't give a damn what she says. And I hate to be crass, but she's not going to affect how I invest dollars. I'm more interested to see what the cabinet looks like on January 31st, because that's the team that's going into the midterms on policy. So a lot of things you talked about, no tips and all that stuff, no tax on that. I'm not a fan of the free $2,000 helicopter money. That's inflationary, but we'll see what it looks like. But right now, the biggest index you've got to give Trump.
What Kasie's getting at here is something a lot of people in politics, and honestly a lot of people on TV, still don't fully respect. Voters don't experience the economy through spreadsheets. They experience it through rent, groceries, car insurance, and whether their paycheck stretches to Friday. So when a president is out there grading the economy like it's a report card, it can come off tone deaf even if certain macro indicators look fine. And here's the key part that backs her up. Inflation can cool down without anyone feeling relief. If prices rise 20% over a couple years and inflation drops from 9% to 3%, you're still stuck living with that 20% jump. It just means the bleeding slowed down. Most households don't hear 3% inflation and think awesome. They think, why is everything still expensive? That disconnect is where incumbents get wrecked because people interpret it as gaslighting, not optimism. Kasie's also right that Trump's relationship with working class voters was built on a specific brand. I'm rich, but I'm mad on your behalf. That only works if people feel like you're fighting the system they're stuck in. But when you're the guy in charge and you're surrounded by billionaires and you're telling people affordability is great while credit card rates are still punishing and housing is still brutal, you're no longer the outsider, you're the system. And look, even conservative economists have warned that broad tariffs don't just punish foreign countries, they raise input costs for American businesses. That shows up in building materials, appliances, farm supplies, and consumer goods. Translation, you can't talk affordability while keeping policies that quietly add cost to the supply chain. The Marjorie Taylor Greene clip matters less because it's her specifically and more because it's a symptom. When even the loudest loyalists start admitting that people feel insulted, that's not a media narrative, that's political gravity. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.